It's a game so fun, Matthew Broderick and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on the helicarrier alike can't refuse. I'm Andrew Milani, and welcome to This Game Holds Up. The goal of this series is to highlight a selection of classic video games that are still fun as hell to play today. These games could have released in arcades, on home console, or even on handheld. The only parameter I have now is that the games will be from before the full 3D era of the PlayStation and Nintendo 64. Without further ado, let's get into the first game, Galaga. Before we can look at Galaga, we must look at what led up to it. By the late 70s, the arcade scene was mainly dominated by Pong, Breakout, simple racing games, and primitive one-on-one action games. Tomohiro Nishikado was working as a game developer for Taito, where he wanted to create a game that could rival the addicting gameplay of Breakout. He ended up creating a shooter with a sci-fi setting inspired by Star Wars and War of the Worlds. That game was Space Invaders, and it was released in arcades in 1978. The game is very simple. The player has to destroy all the enemies on screen. The enemies scroll back and forth and down the screen to a rhythm of computer tones as they fire shots down at you. As the enemies progress down screen, they get faster and faster. There's even a UFO that flies across the screen every once in a while. Hit it for some nice bonus points. The player can move left or right, hide behind bunkers, and even block enemy shots by firing right at them. However, the player can only fire one shot on screen at a time, so it's important that the player makes their targets. There's one-hit deaths, and you only have 3 lives per credit. After that, it's game over. Yeah, this game is tough. The result was a smash hit that marked the beginning of the golden age of video arcade games, and also started the shoot-'em-up genre. The game was ported to every console and home computer of its day, and is even the best-selling game for the Atari 2600. However, Namco thought they could do one better. The following year, Galaxian was released into arcades. The one big difference is that there's no bunkers for cover anymore, but you can still only fire one shot on screen at a time. Unlike Space Invaders' squid-like enemies, Galaxian's aliens look like bugs. Now, the enemies don't just move back and forth, they zigzag down at you while firing shots. The boss enemies will fly down with a couple of enemies for cover. If you kill the guards, then the boss in one go, you get bonus points. The final enemies will continuously fly down until you clear the screen. The enemy sprites can turn, and while it looks a little janky now, it was an impressive feat back then. It was one of the first games with RGB color, which made it very appealing against other arcade games of its day. Enemies, the player's ship, and the scrolling starfield in the background were all bright and colorful. Oh yeah, did I mention this one is hard too? Naturally, as an all-around upgrade to Space Invaders, Galaxian was a big hit, and was only outgrossed in arcades in 1980 by Asteroids in North America and Pac-Man in Japan. But soon, Namco had trouble moving Galaxian machines after ordering a surplus, so it was decided that Shigeru Yokoyama would create a new game like Galaxian with the same hardware. Though, after a prototype was completed, Namco Research and Development decided to build new hardware for the game and start from scratch. Namco wanted Gala in the name to capitalize off the success of Galaxian. The team would combine Gala with Ga, which is the Japanese word for moth, keeping with Galaxian's bug enemy aesthetic. Namco would release the game in arcades as Galaga in 1981. Like Galaxian, there's no cover to speak of, but you'll quickly notice the differences. The first thing you'll notice is that there's no enemies on screen to begin each stage. Instead, enemies will fly onto the screen in waves, settling into place similar to their starting point in Galaxian. Another new feature is the ability to fire 2 shots on screen at the same time, which makes this game faster and more frantic than its older sibling. And believe me, you'll need all the help you can get. This game is much trickier than Galaxian. The enemy patterns are a bit more complex this time around. The red butterflies zigzag their way down the screen, similar to the enemies in Galaxian. These bee-looking enemies dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. Man, they're using all 5 Ds of dodgeball. Patches O'Houlihan would be proud. After the first few stages, one of these bees will split up into 3 of a different kind of alien in each stage. If you kill all 3 before they leave the screen, you get a points bonus. There's 4 boss Galagas at the top of the screen, which also fly down in a zigzag pattern. Just like the boss aliens in Galaxian, they'll fly down with cover if available. You can get some nice bonuses if you kill their cover before them while they fly down. Each boss Galaga takes 2 shots to kill, and they have a tractor beam. If you get caught in the tractor beam, you can still escape with a well-timed shot. However, if you aren't able to time your shot, you will lose a ship. But, if you still have lives left and shoot the alien with your stolen ship while it swoops down, you get to control 2 ships and fire double the shots. Going for the dual fighter adds another degree of difficulty to the game, and you can get burned if you're not careful. If you hit the alien with your ship before it comes down, you won't be able to get it back. Even successfully getting the dual fighter adds its own layer of problems. The extra firepower is tempting, but you're also twice as likely to get hit. Do you risk going for the dual fighter? Usually the answer for me is a resounding no, but there's one part of the game that the dual fighter is necessary if you want some extra points: the challenge stages. Challenge stages start on stage 3 and happen every 4th stage after. Here, you face a few waves of enemies, but they just fly on and off screen. Clear an entire wave and you get some bonus points. Clear all the waves and you get an even nicer bonus. Though, without the dual fighter, you'll probably have trouble just clearing one of the waves. Funny enough, the challenge stages were initially inspired by a bug found in the game during development, where the enemies would just fly off stage without firing at you. Yokoyama thought it would be fun to make this a challenge stage, something to break the game up, just like the intermissions in Pac-Man, but this time it would reward the player with points. And points aren't just for the high score list. Bonus lives are rewarded at 20,000 points, 70,000 points, and every 70,000 points after that. As the game goes on, the enemies get faster and more aggressive in typical arcade fashion. Early in the game, it's a viable option to hide on either edge of the screen, but as the game goes on, the enemies will fire at you even if you try and hide there. Nowhere on screen is safe. Technically, the visual improvement from Galaxian is noticeable right off the bat. The sprites in this game turn and spin just like before, but here the animations are a lot more smooth. The tractor beam and the spinning animation when you get captured both look great. Even when you die, it looks awesome. Each of the enemy Galagas have their own unique design, unlike Galaxian, in which a lot of the enemies look the same, just with palette swaps. Overall, Galaga is a very visually appealing game. As for the sound, the effects used are simple, cute, and to the point. The sound when you start a new stage is a nice cue to get ready. Your ship firing makes the classic pew pew sound. The sound that Galagas make when they dive down at you also works as a cue for the player to prepare to evade, as well as the tractor beam sound. The small amount of music in the game is fun and helps elevate the game experience like all good soundtracks should. The opening song acts as a heroic fanfare for the player, immediately getting one hyped after dropping your credit and pressing that start button. The challenging stage start music is a perfect way to signal that you've reached a bonus level. When you complete a challenge stage, you hear a nice reprise of the original theme. But when you get a perfect score on a bonus stage, you get a little up-tempo track that basically lets you know that you're awesome at the game. There's 2 tracks for the name entry screen. The first is a somewhat somber song for cracking the high score list, but not number 1, telling you that you could do better. But if you're lucky or skilled enough to reach number 1 on the high scores, you get a song that lets you know that you're a star. The most impressive thing about playing Galaga in today's age of 4K Ultra HD graphics is just how fun it still is to pick up and play. The beauty of the game is that the time to play can be extremely short, or you can extend your credit for hours if you have enough skill. According to the game's creator, Shigeru Yokoyama, the game is held up because of its simplicity, using just 3 inputs and requiring no instructions, as well as its difficulty balance. The more you play, you'll be recognizing patterns a lot better, and picking up strategies along the way that will allow you to progress further with higher scores. It would have been easy to design a difficult game using cheap gimmicks to milk quarters out of the pockets of unsuspecting young people, but Galaga chose the high road. This works in the game's favor, as you'll know you're getting better at the game, and when you see the words "Game Over" on screen, you'll think, I can do better than that now. For this video alone, I had a hard time walking away from the game, and was always tempted to add a virtual credit while playing this game on MAME. Since its original release, Galaga has been ported to, well, pretty much every home computer, home console, and mobile device. The Nintendo Entertainment System version, subtitled Demons of Death, retains the arcade-like aspect ratio by pushing the game screen to the left and placing all other information, including score and lives, to the right. The Game Boy version, which came with Galaxian, is impressive in its own right, retaining the feel of the original, just on a tiny screen, and it even looks great on the Super Game Boy. Galaga is a mainstay alongside Pac-Man on those Namco arcade compilations, which have been on just about every console and handheld since the original PlayStation. Galaga received a handful of its own arcade sequels throughout the years, including Galaga 88, which lets the player start the game with the Dual Fighter at the cost of one of your lives. That's not even getting into the many enhanced versions and sequels that Namco's released on a whole slew of systems. But still, it's hard for any of these games to top the charm, fun, and addicting gameplay as the original Galaga. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you have a comment or have a suggestion for a future episode of This Game Holds Up, let me know down below. Next episode, we shoot and score on NHL 94. I hope to see you back here soon, and remember, old doesn't always mean outdated.